would go through. Like, oh my goodness, this poor autistic or mentally retarded child was triggered by something. My mom was a social worker growing up with the MRDD population. That's the mentally retarded, developmentally disabled population. And so I understand that those folks can get triggered by things. And the fact that we're talking about adults, full-grown adults, being triggered by triggered by something, by someone's speech, uh, it's a sad day in America for that. Number six that Carey Wedley from antimedia.org has is brutal torture tactics, and you know, um, we saw the latest iteration of this in Abu Ghraib in Iraq. With you saw the black hoods. They look like I don't know, some kind of reverse Klans member, some kind of scarecrow from hell. It was definitely not a pretty sight. And of course, we know the waterboarding in Guantanamo Bay. Um, it's torture is a tough one. People as a Christian, I do not believe that you should torture people. But then there's the argument of the ticking time bomb. I don't think we've had any ticking time bombs yet, so I don't know. But I'm not in the know to know. But I don't know if brutal torture tactics work. I'm not a trained interrogator. I don't know what works. I don't know what doesn't work. I know as an American, I want my government to protect me and my family and my fellow statesmen and countrymen from terrorist attacks. Terrorists are not American citizens, or at least the ones that we catch outside. You know, for me, they're not entitled to any constitutional rights. They're not Americans, but they do have human rights. Um, so that's definitely a tough one to walk down because once it's not like I'm sure the torturer here doesn't go from 0 to 100. It's one step at a time. It's one more thing up. It's one more thing up. It's one more thing up. And then the last, number seven, that she has here in the 70 years of the CIA is arming radicals. And, this I feel like this comes up every couple years. It dies down, it comes up, it comes down, it dies down, it comes up. I remember the whole Iran Contra thing. I was a little bit younger, younger kid at that time. I remember being at my grandmother's house, and it was, I mean, there's not many channels on that days during that time. So it was of the five channels, I think those Iran Contra hearings were on like every single channel. But nevertheless, we had the Iran Contra, and no matter how much deep state and the Clinton cronies and the Obama hangers-on, the sycophants try, it's going to come out. The whole gun running thing in Benghazi, the Christopher's I'm blanking on Ambassador Christopher Stevens. Yes, God rest his soul, murdered um, by Islamic terrorists in Benghazi, and it's going to come out that we have been funding Islamic radicals all over the Middle East and North Africa. Benghazi was the hub of that gun, or a hub of one of those gun running operations that went bad. That's why everyone's been in that whole deal playing, can't see, can't hear, can't talk about this whole Benghazi situation. And it's clear to me because there's more than that. If it was just really simply terrorists attacking and killing an American ambassador, I never bought the whole, well, we don't want to say something before the election because people will think you're weak and they're not going to vote for Obama. I didn't buy that. As Americans, we come together when we're attacked. And so if terrorists on September 11th anniversary went and blew up one of our consulates in Benghazi and murdered our ambassador for no good reason other than they're an American and it's September 11th, that would have been a rallying call for President Obama. Security measures, this, that, mistakes are always made, but it's always the fault of the person who's delivering the bomb, who's coming in with an AK-47 with a Kalashnikov with grenade launchers. Those are the people who are at fault here. Um, So we have been arming radicals. The whole Syrian civil war, you know, the more you look into it, the more complicated it gets. From Sunni Shia civil war to Alawites and Christians to gas pipelines to Russian sea base, everyone has their hand in there, and everyone has their hand in the other guy's bag too. There's so many hands in everyone else's bag, no one knows whose bag they have their hand in. And I think that's the problem. And I think that we, as Americans, should be arming radicals, especially Islamic radicals, who, given their druthers, would kill you and your family. They would put your daughter into sex slavery. If your wife was young enough, they'd do the same to her too. Those are the last people on earth that we should be arming. But nevertheless, we do, and I'm glad to see that President Trump, at least above overtly, has said that there's an ending to that, and I think that that is the truth of the matter, because as soon as you heard President Trump announce that he is no longer going to, that we are no longer arming these Syrian rebels, these Islamist rebels, you saw a tide turn. Um, it's and you're I think this is it's we're in mop-up operations right now, and historians are going to look back, and they're going to look back at Obama and Secretary Clinton and Secretary John Kerry, and they're going to find at their fault. Not like it's, oh my goodness, it's completely their fault, but they are definitely going to be held culpable for their inaction, and then both for their action as well. Obama's red lines, and the American people were never going to get involved in Syria. They were never ever going to let that happen, and Obama just made himself look foolish by putting that red line out there, and the world called him on it. Um, Everyone knew we were not going to go to war there. American people are not for going to take down Bashar al-Assad. We saw him on 60 Minutes. I don't know how many years ago that was. Him and his beautiful wife. I'm no kind of Assad sycophant in the least bit, but nevertheless, he came off as a reasonable person. We now know what the opposite of reasonable, secular dictators in the Middle East are. And it's crazy, Islamic, radical, fundamentalists who want to chop off, uh, uh, you name the body part, and they'll give you the reason why they want to chop it off. Um, so a very interesting article here by Carey Wegley from, I'm sorry, Wedler, excuse me, from antimedia .org. It's definitely worth a quick read. Everyone loves the top 10 list. This is something that's actually worth digging into, because it's gonna pique your interest to look a little bit deeper into the history of the United States. Now the thing about it is that I, as an American, I'm a nationalist. A libertarian, a Christian. I love America. I love American history. And that's the thing, is that no matter what narrative you look at, you can find the underbelly in everything, in anything. And so what are we going to promote as Americans? And, the Black Lives Matter crowd, the Antifa crowd, all they want to do is talk about the sores of America, the black eyes, the stains, and there's stains to go around in every group, in every country. But the shining light that is the United States of America is like no other place on earth. And people around the world wouldn't be clamoring to get here if it wasn't the case. And so we as a people definitely need to have um, more unity around the culture that is America and the United States. We are the country that freed slaves. We went to war, a civil war, where hundreds of thousands of people died. I am from Ohio, the great state of Ohio, the Buckeye State. This is the home of abolition. This is where the abolitionist movement started. This is where all of the resources and the people and the volunteers came from. This is where thousands, tens of thousands of people volunteered to fight the Civil War. Now, the Civil War has a lot of different, as an American historian, there's the simplistic answer is slavery was the reason for the Civil War, and that's one reason among several. But you cannot deny the fact that for thousands of Ohioans, Pennsylvanians, Michiganders, New Yorkers, and Massachusettsers and Vermonters, that anti-slavery was a part of the fact that they went and picked up a gun and went to war and fought, died, got maimed for the cause of liberty for black people. Um, no one has done more for the freedom of black people than Christianity. For white Christians in particular, no one has done more for the world in general to lift up poverty, to lift up hope, to lift up mankind than Christianity in general and white Western Christianity in particular. Um, the first global ban on slavery came from Britain in the 18, I believe, 30s, if I'm not mistaken. Um, a white Anglo-Saxon Christian country deemed and demanded slavery to be an abominable act and banned it. Only in Christianity can you have a freedom from slavery where we have the biblical underpinnings to say while the Bible does talk about the relationship between slave and slave owners, it is antithetical to a Christian to own a slave. And so that's where, 30 years later, after that proclamation in Britain, we're here in the United States fighting our own civil war over similar issues of slavery, freedom, states' rights, the states' right of being able to hold slaves. That's a, when Southerners say states' rights and Northern aggression, yeah, they are right. Um, but what they have to grasp with is that one of the topics of states' rights is the states' right to have slaves. Um, Now we can't have two rosy-colored glasses because we know that Abraham Lincoln himself was no friend to the African American in particular. He was an advocate for deportation to the African country of Liberia, which was founded by freed American slaves, and it was our own American final solution to send the freed Africans, the freed slaves, back to Africa. That was, one of Lincoln's plans. Now, whether that's a plan that would have come to fruition or not, we don't know. But it is part of the historical record that this was a option on the table for what to do with the freed slaves. I don't think that would have been, I don't think that mass deportation was an option because the drain on the labor pool, whether even they weren't slaves, they were still a source of cheap labor. So I don't think that there would have been incentivized for many people to stay, although I know that many would have probably gone. If you notice, the presidents of Liberia and the people's names, they're all American names. Charles Taylor and Michael Smith, they all sound like names from Britain because they're all they're freed slaves from the 19th century, and they carry on those traditions to this day. So there's a lot of blame to go around. Like I said, there are no clean hands in history. That's what makes history history, and that's what makes human beings human beings. I would love to see or talk to the person who is sinless. I believe the only person that I know of was Jesus Christ himself, who was without sin. So we all fall short of God. We all sin. We all have problems. And I think highlighting the fact that America's problems are so terrible is detrimental. Um, the half glass full, half glass empty. What are you? What do you choose? And whatever you choose, that's what you find. And so if the Antifa folks, the Black Lives Matter folks, are going to find racism everywhere, they're going to look for racism. They're going to find it. They're going to even find it where it doesn't exist because it's become a piece of their own, imagination.